This is video 308. There goes one son. My other son is intent on knocking everything off my desk that he possibly can, because by gum, that's what he does. So, anywho, but just wanted to kind of raise my coffee cup to you and wish you a happy spring. Today is March 20th, 2022. First day in spring, we had daylight savings. We sprung forward last week, and it really messed things up as it normally does. And supposedly, the U.S. government is considering not doing daylight savings, switching around anymore. So I don't know if that means we'll be on standard time forever or daylight savings time forever or whatnot. But apparently, according to the papers and whatnot, people have been saying, well, they tried that in the 70s and nobody liked it. So we'll see if it stays or not. But anywho, this video, I watched the other video, the last one I made like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And this video will not be about the war in Ukraine, but just kind of to give you a bit of a timestamp. Russia is still invading Ukraine for no reason. And the United States has given a lot of money in aid and a lot of equipment, self-defense equipment to Ukraine to defend themselves. But the U.S. is very adamant that we are not going to get involved. No boots on the ground, as it were. You can kind of read into that what you want. We're giving them the tools they need to blow up tanks with the Javelin missiles and new switchblades, I think, are the new thing. They're these little, about 3 feet long, about a meter long rock, almost looks like a glider that you throw. And it's like a kamikaze. It just hones in on the biggest thing and blows it up. So, don't know what's going to happen. For all we know, there's going to be a nuclear war, and you're watching this in the future, thinking back on how great things were in 2022. That said, it is still pretty sweet here in the States anyway. I thought about that as I went to my fridge and grabbed a thing of cheese, and I was like, as complaining as I want to be, I still get to go to my fridge and pull out a piece of cheese and eat it whenever I want. So it's not like it's the end of the world. But it is very hard to understand and to watch basically another nation try to consume another nation. And there's something in, I guess, the American, in my system at least, where I'm like, hey, you beat up my friend, I want to go there and just stop it. And I did touch a little bit. I don't want to talk too much about this, but again, the Pope has come out against the war and has pleaded. He even went to the Russian embassy in Rome and said, please stop this war. And I almost think we're not going to do it, but imagine if 500 Catholic priests descended upon Ukraine, basically like what was the movie with Raul Julia's Father Romero down in South America. He was a Catholic priest. He was based on a true story. Catholic priest, and I guess it was bandits and drug runners and whatnot, and the Catholic priest was like, stop shooting. These are the people. These are our brothers and sisters. And he performed the mass. He gave communion, whatnot, and the drug runners shot him up in his own church, his own parish. It's just that idea of, we pulled everyone out of there. The United States pulled all the Americans out. I just almost wonder, if Russia didn't know who they were killing, And they killed several Americans and, British citizens and everything else. I mean, I think they wouldn't be as cocky as they are now. But anyway, we'll see what happens. I don't necessarily, like I said, I don't have a good suggestion, but I just think this whole sit and wait thing is just kind of stupid. But for smarter minds than my own, for cooler heads than my own, and the theory is that eventually the government will just collapse and, I don't know, magically those tanks and I'll just disappear or something. I don't know. It's crazy. But again, cooler minds than my own. I wouldn't. It's hard to sit by and watch. Hard to sit by and watch. But anyway, that's not what this video is about. So let's move on to trans stuff. A lot of trans stuff kind of going on. I'm glad to say there is a lot of pushback against people in Texas, in some other states, the anti-trans legislation. And I think a lot of that has to do with just communication and, getting it out there. And I think I may have talked about that a little bit, maybe 2 videos ago, about just getting it out there, transgender, trans kids, trans youth, just getting it out there. It's kind of like women, this movie that just came out a couple weeks ago, Disney movie, a Pixar called Turning Red. Part of it deals with menstruation. And, people are like, oh, we don't want to talk about that. Why? You know what I mean? We just have this, like, our society, there's certain things, abortion is another one. Oh, it's a taboo subject. No, it's not. It's about reproductive rights. Oh, but we shouldn't talk about that. Well, no, we need to talk about it because you're giving it a mystique. You're giving it a, hush hush. We can't talk. Talk about it. Because much like again the Florida rule, don't say gay. If we don't talk about it, we act like it's something's bad wrong with it. And we're not going to deal with it. Then the behavior that bad behavior is just going to continue. The same reason why they want to ban books. In Texas and other states, because once you get people thinking, and they're like, wait a minute, the society that this is like a fascist, authoritarian. Wait a minute, I'm a rebel. They're going to rebel because they want to think and they want to think for themselves. And so again, it's all kind of interconnected, but I'm happy to see that again. But we still have a long way to go. We have a long way to go. And a friend of mine out in California had breast implants, and she seems pretty happy with them. And another friend of mine here in Louisville, I think, is about to have breast implants, and she's excited about it. So I know there's kind of a two-sided issue there. People who want to get them and can't get them. People who want to get them and think about getting them and can get them, but then people say, no, you don't want to get them because you'll ruin your life, and I ruined my life. Here, watch this video, and you shouldn't do it because it's bad for you. And I think it just comes down to what you as an individual, be informed, get the information, dig as deep as you want to, and ultimately you'll make a decision. Is it worth the potential risk? Who can say? Only you are the best judge. I myself would love to get some breast implants. As big as I am, tall-wise, and as girthy as I am, whatever boobage I have is my fat. It's my body fat. And not like mammary gland breast tissue. It's just I'm fat, And so we'll push things together and put it on a cup, and it looks like I have boobies, but I really don't. I'm just a fat person, okay? So yeah, I'd like some definition. I'd like some, I'd like something in the bag instead of it being, only a quarter full. Yeah, so saving up for that. It might take me a couple years. About $7,000 last time I checked. And insurance won't pay for it, obviously. Who knows, that might change. Society is changing, you know. If you're trans, you know, maybe it can be covered like HRT and GCS, you know. Seems like it would kind of be, I don't know, makes sense to me. Cover it for everybody. You know what I mean? That's just my opinion, though. I think everybody should have health care. You know, we just, the federal government so far, I think it's something like $200 million. Getting back to Ukraine briefly. And it's a worthwhile cause. I'm not complaining about it. But the United States just was like, here you go. You know, here's $200 million. Here you go. You know, for a good cause. For a good cause. But if we have that amount of money that we can just come out of thin air and give away, I think we can do healthcare. I think we can do nationalized healthcare. I really, really do. And college debt too. Forgive that as well. So many things we can do if we wanted to. I guess we are kind of dancing around politics, aren't we? But we'll get back to trans stuff. Because one of my friends also came up with this idea that was kind of neat. But they talked about their parents and how their parents were somewhat authoritarianism? Is that authoritarianism-istic? You know, that the parents said, you'll do what I say because I told you to do it. And that society somewhat, I know up until, you know, as I was being raised in the 80s, born in the 70s, raised in the 80s, you know, that was kind of you do the right thing because I tell you to. As opposed to kind of critical thinking, saying, well, you know, well, here's the reason why. Think for yourself. Evaluate, da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay. So, kind of much like the Texas book banning the books and whatnot. You know, you don't think that way because I tell you to. You know, but the idea is somewhat against trans youth. You know, here you have the governor of Texas. As near as I can tell, not a medical doctor, okay? Or you have the Attorney General of Texas, again, not a medical doctor, no physician, no training, no skill set. Just says, yeah, it's child abuse, it's genital mutilation, blah, 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 and totally ignoring doctors, science, counselors, American Academy of Pediatrics, okay? All of the science of it. You know, again, do it because I tell you to. You know? And, you know, where does that come from? You know? Ooh, I don't think I can. Hold on a minute. I got to pull this up. There we go. He's back again. You know, I think some of it... Ow, hair. Harry. What you doing? Sorry. There we go. Oh, he'll probably get up and leave me. Don't leave me. I need you in my life. I do. Where were we? Oh, religion. Well, that's where I was going. The Bible says so, you know. God said it. I believe it. That settles it. You know. You know, I watched a talk by a university professor, and of course you can say, well, obviously it's liberal agenda. But it was a biblical scholar, so I tend to think, you know, he has a little more credentials than I do. But he talked about the book of Mark, and he said, you know, historically, they believe the author of the book of Mark lived in Rome around 200. You know, obviously the accounts and whatnot you have the death of Christ and, whatnot, AD, BC, all that crap. But he said that the writer lived in Rome, and that, as they were gathering together those writings, or the stories, I guess I should say, they were oral stories. He said, so, here for a good 200 or so years, people would get together and share this oral story. And he said, now, for those of you who have ever played the game Telephone, he says, that when one person tells a story to someone else, who then tells a story to someone else, who then tells a story to someone else, that story can change, And so for the early part of that time period, what we now know as the Book of Mark was this verbal story that was told. It was kind of, it mutated, it changed, And then he said, the earliest actual written, that they know of was around 200 CE, okay, 200 AD. And it's bits and pieces. And he says, what would happen is someone would write it down, and then someone would say, hey, I'd like a copy of that. Can I copy it? And so, yeah, here he is in Rome. He's got this kind of put together. It's kind of a hodgepodge, but this is what I think happened, da-da-da-da. And, someone from Verona comes over, or Milan, or, whatnot. Someone comes over, hey, I'd like a copy of that. And so they sit down and they make a hand copy, right? Because that was the only way to do it. And he said, well, people are infallible. And so maybe copy B is a little different from copy A. Or maybe by the time someone else comes in and, I'd like a copy, of Venice would like a copy, they come in and copy it. Well, by the time they copy version A to their version, D, E, F, G, it may be a little bit different. And so they take their version back, and, someone somewhere else, maybe from Sicily, says, hey, I'd like a copy. Well, they could go all the way to Rome, get copy A, but, this other copy G, maybe copy I is a lot closer, so they just copy that one. Well, now they've made a copy of a bad copy of copy A, and so basically over the short of it is that as time progressed, here you had these different versions, okay? Different versions of the Book of Mark. And he said that as time went on, in modern times, there was a professor who said, look, I just want to compare what written versions we have. And so, he began to collect and compare these different versions of the Gospel of Mark. And he found around, I think it was around 3,000 differences, major differences, major differences between the different Gospels of Mark, And so, not to discredit the Gospel, okay, but just to acknowledge that there are differences. And, the scholar had said that, around a certain time period, the rise of women participating in the church was a bad thing. And he said, and suddenly the copies of the transcript, or the copy of the gospel after that, of the Bible, it began to include some things about how women are not allowed to do this. And, women are unclean because of their period, because of this, they can't participate. He said, so again, not to discredit what you believe in. He said, but acknowledge that this has been a thing that has changed and mutated, and that the Bible that you go down to your bookstore and buy just from statistically, there's no way in hell that's even close to the original book of Mark. Okay. Assuming that it was written by someone who was a disciple of Christ. Okay, someone who was a first person witness and could say, I remember on that day we were walking out from Galilee and, da 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 da. And so again, just the idea in our society here today, 2020, 2022, that someone would say, in the state of Texas, da 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 against gay people or trans or whatever, because it's the Word of God. No, it's someone else's interpretation of the Word of God. And, like any tool, can be used for good, be used for evil, right? Although you probably would, say like the Death Star probably only had one purpose, okay? But, like any tool, it can be used for good or bad. And I'm kind of curious to see what happens as time goes on and more parishes and churches and religions. I made mention in my video a couple weeks ago, I was driving in the Lutheran church on my way to work, has a big pride flag. And there are a number of churches that have pride flags. They're, all inclusive, da 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 da. And again, it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. I think it may be a long time, but these people in government eventually, and then we'll look back and say, can you believe we were so stupid attacking trans kids, and in the future, it won't be non-binary, it'll be something else, The other thing that I saw this last week that was pretty cool was about people who think differently. And I can't think of the name of it, I'm sorry. But they're talking about autism. The symbol of autism, some people use the puzzle piece when another symbol is the infinity symbol. And it's just recognizing that people think differently. And the article that I saw talked about, at some point they labeled it as abnormal. And so you had normal and you had abnormal. And by doing that, you said that this one way is the right way, normal, and this other way is abnormal. It's different, it's wrong, it's bad. So stop thinking it that way. And they used a different word that was all inclusive, and it just kind of said some people, now it might be most people think this way, statistically, or just to say there are more people that think this way, but there's also people that think this way, and this way, and this way, and this way, and this way. They're not abnormal. They're just different ways of thinking of things. And the more and more people that you have, again, like I said, I think there are some things that are changing. There definitely is some things that are changing. Yahoo had an article this morning about, I think her name, and this will be the last thing I talk about, Kim Davis, who was a law clerk in the state of Kentucky back, I'll say 2015, 7 years ago, who refused to sign same-sex marriage certificates. And, it was the law of the land. You can marry whoever you want. State by state, they were ratifying it. They were changing things. Okay. And she objected to it. I'm not going to sign your marriage certificate because it goes against my religious beliefs. Okay. And she's still kind of in the news because apparently she doesn't want to pay her legal fees. Okay. She wanted to stand up for her individual rights, but she doesn't want to pay her legal fees. So that's kind of why it's still kind of in the news. Will the state of Kentucky pay for her? Da, 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 da. But it kind of reminded me of how far we have come. You know, if you were to read, you know, an article today about, you know, someone, and it wasn't that far fetched. It was actually 2 or 3 weeks ago. There was a thing in Colorado. It was a woman who was a web page designer or something, and she specifically said that she will not design web pages for gay people. So I guess it's still happening, okay? But the difference is now Joe Public, okay, your average American would cry foul at that. You know, what do you mean you're not going to do it because of who they love? That's stupid. But here 7 years ago, okay, I remember it. People were like, yeah, you shouldn't, you know, gay people are, that's immoral, and da 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 da. You had the common, again, Joe Public. It was kind of split, you know, and maybe even leaning a little more on the other side. Well, you can't legislate morality, you know, da da da. You can't infringe on someone's rights. And we'd say, well, today we would say, well, we're not infringing on your rights. You believe what you want, but you are infringing on someone else's rights. You see what I'm saying? You know, that's the way we would say today. You know, just kind of to say how far society has come in that time, but also to say how far we have yet to go. You know, our journey is not over yet. As long as, you know, I hate to say a Republican, but as long as a politician can try to use trans folk as a scapegoat, you know, a power play to appeal to a base of people to get power, I mean, we still have a long way to go. But again, I think it's just a matter of time. You know, it may not be, it's not going to be in my lifetime, but maybe in my daughter's lifetime, you know, that won't be as a big an issue. I did say I'd shut up, but I do have one more thing. I've not quite gotten, we talked a little bit about breasts earlier. I've not quite gotten the results that I like. You'd say, well, Robin, you idiot. You've been on hormones for 6 years. That ship has sailed. But, you know, when I was off estrogen, okay, my body, I mentioned, recycled a lot of what I had gained. So I have noticed, you know, the sacs are filling back up. Okay, what little breasts I have. But one of the things that I talked with my doctor about was, you know, I'm not getting the results that I wanted. And he said, well, you're taking them orally, right? I said, yeah. He said, we'll take them anally. And I was like, well, I don't know how to suck through my butt. I'm not a turtle. And he said, no, just stick a little bit of Vaseline on it and shove it up there and get it past your sphincter, and the you know, your body moisture and heat will melt the pill, the capsule, and it'll be absorbed rectally, okay, like a suppository, you know. And I didn't think about it at the time, but that makes sense, you know, if you have preparation H or whatever, you know, it's a suppository, right? But as big as an asshole as I can be, I don't really have a big asshole. But I did some searching around, and you can actually buy applicators. I did not know this. But if you have the same situation that I do, where you're not a big asshole, you don't have a big asshole, you can actually order them off Amazon. I looked at Walgreens; they didn't sell them. You can order them though from like CVS or, you know, probably a website. But they're basically little plungers. Kind of reminds me of a tampon inserter. Okay, and basically you load the progesterone or whatever into it, and you shove it in as far as you can get it to go, and you push the little plunger, and that, you know, like the the alien inner jaws, it goes, and spits it a little further. I didn't know such things existed, so I thought I'd share that with you. I ordered some, and we'll see. We'll see if that helps, because I can't, there's nothing like sticking something up there and you're thinking, oh, I'm doing something that's going to help me out. And then, you wake up in the morning and your sheets are covered in white because it didn't stay in. So I thought I'd share that with you. You probably already know. You're smarter than I am. Definitely, you're in the know. But really, that's just about it. But I keep thinking of things. Do you mind if I talk just 5 more minutes? Lately, I've become very jealous of married couples. Double income, I think, is probably the bottom line. And you shouldn't shit all over yourself, right? But I watched the news today had like a bunch of vacation commercials. Come out to Cozumel, or now that the COVID's starting to kind of go away, and I just kind of thought about. I felt somewhat guilty because I had gotten the divorced, and it was such a struggle, and lost the house and everything. And I think I've done a pretty good job of salvaging damage control and doing my best that I can. But I definitely have a very jealous streak of married couples with a double income, and to go on vacation, not a reality for me, and I feel guilty somewhat, for my daughter, because there's some things that she just has not experienced, that I got to experience somewhat, even though I was, the little boy with my family. We did go to Disney World once. We did go on a cruise. Where did we go? Tulum, Mexico. Tulum. There were things that I got to do as a child that she's not going to have an opportunity to do. And it makes me feel really bad. It makes me feel like I failed in some way. And I almost said something the other day. I went to visit my ex to kind of visit and see how they're doing. We're still friends, my ex and I. Not friends like we'd go play Warhammer or something together, but we're still civil to each other. I definitely, would give her a kidney if she needed it. Take her to the hospital if she needed it. Babysit her cats, okay? But I think about, that's where some of the guilt of me transitioning somewhat. But, the truth is, I couldn't live that way anymore. I couldn't not transition. I got to that point. I had to. But, I think I've done the best that I could do. Make the best of a bad situation. I've done everything I can to make sure she has everything she needs. Not to throw myself a party, give myself a medal, but I have done what I can do. But there's still part of me that's like, man, when you see a commercial, and granted, it's a commercial. It's like Facebook. You see people only post pictures of themselves at their best. Here we are on the beach. Here we are having ice cream by the river, which is good for them. But it just it made me feel very selfish for transitioning, even though I know better. But my hope is that eventually I will get back into a house, and that'll kind of be my retirement house, the house I'm going to retire in. I still have 15 years to retire, so I have time to find the house, and it may take me that long to scrape up enough for a down payment, but I guess there are certain opportunities that, you can't redo them. You can't go back. I remember when she was really tiny, and I'm not giving away, secrets here, but, I wanted her to, she wanted to go to Girl Scouts, but we couldn't afford it. We were going through the divorce, and I couldn't pay my mortgage. My ex couldn't, we just didn't have the money. And, I can remember going to school, and, the Girl Scouts were up front. I was like, God, please, I can't do this. I can't afford a uniform. And I'm sure they're, much like in scouting, when I volunteered, troops, and they have loaner closets for uniforms, and obviously that's the whole point of like fundraising and Girl Scout cookies, but that was part of teaching, being independent, raising money for your funds, and I'm sure we could have found a workaway, but it was just a bad time, and things like that I feel guilty. Obviously I did the best that I can do, but I've noticed it is very hard for me, when I see the commercial and it's like, come out to Gatlinburg, and I'm like, well, shit, I want to go out to Gatlinburg. I want to take Katie out to Gatlinburg, but I can't afford it, So, bow wow. But not to end this on a downer, but it's been kind of something that's been on my mind. And I know, again, we do the best we can do with what we have. That's all you can do. That's all you can do. And I know for me, I put off transitioning as long as I could, and I couldn't live that way anymore. I was in self-destruction mode. So, anyway, on that happy note, I'm going to check on my daughter and probably play some more Minecraft with her. Till next time, I wish you the best of luck in becoming your authentic self. As you define it, hang in there. Good luck.